The waitress looked at me with pity. Not sympathy, not concern, pity. The kind of look people give someone standing on train tracks who hasn't noticed the headlights yet. She glanced at my stomach, then at my husband, then back at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to say something. Instead, she quietly set my coffee on the table and slipped an extra napkin underneath the saucer. Then she walked away. I almost ignored it. I wish I had, because written on that napkin were 7 words that would destroy my marriage. Check his phone before it's too late. I stared at the handwriting. Small, quick, almost rushed. My heart started beating faster. I looked up immediately. The waitress was already gone. Ryan was in the restroom. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. At that moment, I was 7 months pregnant with our first child, a baby girl. The nursery was finished. The baby shower invitations had already been mailed. Our families couldn't stop talking about how lucky we were. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple, the successful husband, the beautiful wife, the baby on the way, the picture-perfect life. The only problem? Pictures don't show what's happening outside the frame. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. And let me ask you something. Have you ever ignored a red flag because you loved someone too much to believe what was right in front of you? Because that's exactly what I did. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and for almost 6 years I believed my husband was my soulmate. Until one waitress changed everything. Ryan and I met when I was 23. He was charming, funny, confident, the kind of man who could walk into a room and have everyone laughing within minutes. Women loved him. Men wanted to be him. Even my father liked him immediately, which was rare. My dad didn't trust anyone, especially not men dating his daughter. But Ryan somehow won him over in a single weekend. Looking back, I think that's what made him so dangerous. He knew exactly how to make people like him, exactly what to say, exactly how to act, exactly how to become whatever someone wanted him to be. At the time, I thought it was confidence. Now I know it was something else. Ryan needed attention the way normal people need oxygen. Without it, he couldn't function. I just didn't realize how serious it was. Not yet. The first time I noticed something was off happened about a year after we got married. We were having dinner at a restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a casual Friday night. Our waitress couldn't have been older than 22. Pretty, blonde, college student type. When she came to take our order, Ryan smiled. Normal. Then he complimented her earrings. Still normal. Then her hair. A little weird. Then her smile. Then her perfume. Then her eyes. By the time she walked away, I felt like a third wheel at my own dinner. I laughed about it. Sort of. Ryan laughed too. You're jealous of a waitress? I'm not jealous. You sound jealous. I let it go, because I trusted him. And because every relationship advice article in existence tells women not to be insecure. So I wasn't. At least that's what I told myself. But then it kept happening. At grocery stores, coffee shops, gas stations, hotels, airports, anywhere there were women. Ryan found a way to flirt. Not enough to get caught, just enough to make me uncomfortable. And every time I brought it up, I got the same response. That's just my personality. You know I love you. You're overthinking it. Maybe you've heard those words before. Maybe someone convinced you that your discomfort was the problem instead of their behavior. If so, you know exactly how confusing it feels, because eventually you start questioning yourself. Not them, yourself. I stopped mentioning it. Life got busy. Ryan's career took off. He worked in medical sales and traveled constantly. 3 cities one week, 4 the next. Always meetings, always conferences, always networking. He was good at it, too good. His income doubled, then tripled. We bought a bigger house, a nicer car, started talking about children. Everything looked perfect, but perfection can hide a lot of ugly things. When I got pregnant, I expected Ryan to become more focused on our family. Instead, something changed. At first, it was subtle. More time on his phone, more business trips, more late meetings, more nights where he seemed physically present but mentally somewhere else. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and found him smiling at his screen. Not smiling, grinning, the kind of grin people get when they're excited. I asked what was funny. He locked the phone immediately. Work stuff, the 2 most suspicious words in the English language. Still, I said nothing. Because I wanted peace, because I was pregnant, because I was tired, because I loved him. Pick whichever reason you want. The result was the same. I stayed silent. The next red flag appeared during my baby shower, and this one should have been impossible to ignore. My friend Lauren pulled me aside. Can I ask you something? Sure. Is everything okay with you and Ryan? My stomach dropped instantly. Because people don't ask that question unless they've seen something. What do you mean? Lauren hesitated, then shook her head. Never mind. No, tell me. She looked uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. I probably misunderstood. Lauren, she sighed. I saw him at a hotel bar 2 weeks ago. I froze. Ryan was supposedly in Chicago for work. What was he doing? He was talking to a woman. I waited. Lauren waited. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, and Lauren looked away. They looked very friendly. Friendly. The most dangerous word in relationship history. Because friendly can mean anything. A conversation, a flirtation, a date, a kiss, a betrayal. I asked for details. She didn't have many. Just enough to make me uncomfortable. Not enough to prove anything. That night I confronted Ryan. His reaction was immediate, offended, almost angry. Seriously? I'm just asking. Lauren saw me talking to a client. A female client. Women buy medical equipment too, Emily. I felt stupid immediately. That's how good he was. He could turn suspicion into guilt faster than anyone I'd ever met. By the end of the conversation, I was apologizing for asking my husband why another woman saw him flirting at a hotel bar. Can you imagine that? Have you ever apologized for something that turned out to be completely justified? Because that's what manipulators do. They don't defend themselves, they make you defend yourself. And Ryan was a master. A few weeks later, I went with him to a company dinner. It was one of those networking events where everyone wears expensive clothes and pretends they're having fun. Ryan thrived there. I hated it. Halfway through the evening, I went looking for him. I found him near the bar, talking to a woman. Again, she was laughing, touching his arm, leaning closer than necessary. And Ryan? Ryan looked thrilled, not guilty, not uncomfortable, thrilled. When he spotted me, he immediately stepped back, too fast, like a child caught doing something wrong. The woman walked away. Ryan smiled. Hey, babe. I remember standing there with my pregnant belly, watching my husband smile like nothing happened. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not jealousy, not insecurity, fear. Because deep down I knew something. I just wasn't ready to admit it. Ryan didn't flirt because he was friendly. Ryan flirted because he liked it, because he needed it, because every woman was a mirror reflecting validation back at him, and he couldn't stop looking. The closer we got to the baby's due date, the worse it became. More phone calls, more texts, more secrecy, more excuses. One night I woke up at 2 a.m. Ryan wasn't in bed. I found him downstairs, sitting on the couch, smiling at his phone. Again. The screen went dark the second he noticed me. That pit in my stomach got bigger, and bigger, and bigger. But I still didn't check, not yet. Maybe because I was afraid. Maybe because I already knew what I'd find. A week later came the restaurant. The napkin, the waitress, the message. Check his phone before it's too late. Ryan returned from the restroom, smiling, relaxed, completely unaware that my world had just shifted. I folded the napkin and slid it into my purse. He didn't notice. Dinner continued. Normal conversation, normal smiles, normal marriage, at least on the surface. But inside everything had changed, because for the first time, someone else saw it too. Someone outside my marriage. Someone with nothing to gain. A complete stranger. And if a stranger felt sorry for me, what exactly had she seen? That question followed me home. Into bed, into my dreams, into the next morning. I couldn't escape it. By the third day, curiosity became obsession. By the fifth day, obsession became certainty. I needed answers, real answers, not explanations, not excuses, answers. So on a rainy Thursday afternoon, while Ryan was in the shower preparing for another business trip, I finally did something I had never done before. I picked up his phone, and what I found there made that napkin look like a warning from an angel, because Ryan wasn't talking to one woman, or two, or three. There were hundreds, and one message at the very top changed everything. I can't wait to see you again tonight, irrepuerable. The message wasn't from me. And the name attached to it wasn't one I recognized. That's when I realized my marriage wasn't in danger. My marriage was already over, and I was the last person to find out. The first message wasn't the worst one. I wish it had been. Because if it had only been one message, maybe I could have convinced myself there was an explanation, a misunderstanding, a mistake, something innocent. But there were hundreds, hundreds. I sat alone in our bedroom while the shower ran in the bathroom. Ryan was humming, actually humming, like a man with nothing to hide. And meanwhile, I was staring at a phone that looked less like my husband's device and more like evidence in a criminal investigation. My hands were shaking. Not dramatically, not the way movies show it, just enough that I kept accidentally hitting the wrong buttons, enough that I had to keep rereading messages because my eyes wouldn't focus. The woman at the top wasn't someone I knew. Her name was Vanessa. The conversation stretched back almost 6 months, 6 months, while I was pregnant, while we were shopping for cribs, while we were arguing over baby names, while I was throwing up every morning and carrying his daughter. Ryan had been texting another woman, not casually, not professionally, not innocently, flirting, constantly, every day, every single day. The messages weren't graphic. That would have almost been easier. No, they were worse, because they were emotional, playful, personal, the kind of messages people send when they're building intimacy, when they're creating a connection, when they're inviting someone into their life. There were inside jokes, nicknames, late-night conversations, photos, selfies, voice notes, and then I saw something that made my stomach twist. A picture of Ryan, standing in front of a hotel mirror, the same blue shirt he'd worn during a business trip 2 months earlier. Underneath the photo he'd written, "Wish you were here instead." Instead of who? Instead of me? Instead of his wife? Instead of the mother of his child? I felt something crack inside my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. Something colder, something quieter, the beginning of disbelief. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. At first, it doesn't feel real. Your brain refuses to accept it. You keep looking for the missing piece that will make everything make sense, the explanation, the context, the thing that proves you're wrong. So I kept scrolling, looking for something that would save him, something that would save us. I never found it. What I found instead was worse, much worse. Vanessa wasn't the only woman. There was another conversation, and another, and another, and another. Different names, different cities, different stories, different women, but the same Ryan, the same compliments, the same flirting, the same charm, the same lies. It was like watching a salesman use the exact same script on different customers. Copy, paste, repeat. One woman was named Erica, another was Lauren, another was Melissa, another was Katie. I lost count after 12. 12 women that I could confirm in less than 15 minutes. What would you do in that situation? Seriously, pause for a second and think about it, because I still don't know what the right answer is. Would you throw the phone? Would you wake him up? Would you scream? Would you leave? Because I did none of those things. I just sat there, frozen, trying to understand how one person could be so many different people at the same time. Then I heard the shower stop. Instant panic. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Heart pounding, breathing hard. The bathroom door opened. Ryan walked out smiling, towel around his waist. Completely relaxed. Everything okay? I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd loved for 6 years, the man whose baby I was carrying, the man who had promised me forever. And for the first time in my life, I had absolutely no idea who he was. Yeah, the lie tasted bitter. Everything's fine, he smiled, kissed my forehead, then started packing for his trip, and I realized something terrifying. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't worried. He wasn't acting like a man afraid of getting caught. He was acting like a man who thought he'd never get caught. That's a completely different level of confidence, and it scared me, because confidence like that doesn't come from luck. It comes from practice. The next 3 days were torture. Ryan was in Dallas. I was home, alone, pregnant, and slowly falling apart. I kept replaying every memory from our marriage, every trip, every late meeting, every unexplained absence, every moment I'd ignored, and suddenly everything looked different. You know that feeling, when new information changes old memories? When something you thought was beautiful becomes ugly overnight? That's what happened. The entire history of my marriage started rewriting itself, one memory at a time. Then came Sunday. Ryan came home, flowers in hand, smiling, acting like husband of the year. Meanwhile, I knew enough to destroy him, but not enough to understand him. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I wanted answers first. Real answers. Not whatever story he'd invent. The following week became an investigation, and what I learned changed everything. Because the women weren't the real problem. The women were symptoms. The real problem was Ryan himself. Every woman served the same purpose: validation, attention, ego, admiration. Ryan collected female attention the way some people collect watches. He didn't necessarily want all these women. He wanted access to them, the possibility, the option, the proof that he could. And once I understood that, I started seeing things I'd missed for years, like how every conversation somehow became about him, how every compliment energized him, how every criticism devastated him, how every room became an audience. Ryan didn't see women as people, not really. He saw them as mirrors, and he was addicted to his own reflection. The realization hit me one afternoon during lunch with my friend Megan. I finally told someone. Not everything, just enough. Megan listened quietly. Then she asked a question I'll never forget. Does Ryan actually love these women? I thought about it, really thought about it, and suddenly the answer became obvious. No. Then why does he do it? I stared into my coffee. Because now I knew. Because he loves how they make him feel. Megan nodded. Exactly. Ryan wasn't searching for another relationship. He was searching for another high, another compliment, another ego boost, another reminder that he was desirable. And the scary part, people like that never stop, because no amount of attention is enough. It's like trying to fill a hole without a bottom. The next discovery came by accident. Or maybe fate, depends how you look at it. Ryan left his laptop open one evening. A notification appeared. Instagram, private message. I shouldn't have looked, but let's be honest. At that point, the marriage vows were already lying in a shallow grave. The message came from a woman named Sophie, and unlike the others, this wasn't flirting. This was planning. Planning a meeting, planning a dinner, planning a night together. My pulse skyrocketed, because for the first time, there was a date, a location, a real-world event. Proof that this wasn't just online attention-seeking. Ryan was actually meeting these women. I clicked the conversation and immediately wished I hadn't, because there were photos, restaurant receipts, hotel reservations, messages talking about previous meetings, previous nights, previous encounters. Months of them. Months. I sat there staring at the screen while my daughter kicked inside my stomach, and for the first time, I cried. Not because of Ryan, not because of the cheating, because of her, my baby girl, because she deserved better than this. She deserved a father she could admire, a marriage she could look up to, a home built on honesty. Instead, she was getting this, a liar, a cheater, a man who treated loyalty like a temporary inconvenience. Have you ever realized someone wasn't who you thought they were? Not because they changed, because they finally stopped pretending? That was Ryan. The mask wasn't slipping anymore. It was gone. And underneath it was someone I barely recognized. Still, I needed certainty. I needed the final piece. The thing nobody could argue with. The thing even Ryan couldn't explain away. And then fate delivered it. 3 days later, at exactly 8:17 p.m., a message arrived on Ryan's phone while he was in the kitchen. One message, one sentence, one devastating sentence. Can't wait to finally spend the whole weekend together. In Biddy, not a dinner, not a meeting, not a drink, a weekend, an entire weekend. The same weekend Ryan had told me he was attending a conference in Chicago. The same weekend, the same lie, the same betrayal, and suddenly I knew. Without a single doubt, without a single question, without a single excuse left. My husband wasn't flirting anymore. My husband was having an affair, a real one, and the woman waiting in Chicago? She had no idea she wasn't the only one, because what I discovered next shocked me even more. Ryan wasn't cheating with one woman, he was cheating with several, at the same time, and one of them was about to contact me directly. The message arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. At first I thought it was spam, an unknown number, no profile picture, no greeting, just 7 words. I think we're dating the same man. I stared at my phone. Then I read it again, and again, and again. My daughter kicked inside my stomach as if she could feel my heartbeat suddenly accelerating. I looked around the living room. Empty, quiet, normal. But nothing felt normal anymore, because some part of me already knew exactly who the message was about. Ryan, my husband. The father of my unborn child. The man who was supposedly working late. The man who supposedly loved me. The man who apparently had enough free time to maintain multiple relationships. I typed carefully. Who is this? The response came almost immediately. My name is Sophie. My stomach dropped. Sophie. The same Sophie from the messages. The same woman from Chicago. The same woman connected to hotel reservations and secret weekends. My hands started shaking. This was real. Not screenshots. Not speculation. Not assumptions. A real person. A real woman. On the other side of a phone. And apparently she had something to tell me. 5 minutes later, we were on a video call. Neither of us spoke at first. We just stared, studying each other, trying to understand what kind of person was connected to the worst period of our lives. Sophie looked younger than me, maybe 26, dark hair, tired eyes, the kind of face that looked beautiful even through exhaustion. And exhausted she definitely was. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, a lot. Finally, she spoke. I didn't know about you. Simple, direct. No excuses, no attitude, no defensiveness, just honesty. And for some reason that hurt more than anything. Because immediately I believed her. I don't know why. Maybe it was her face. Maybe it was the way her voice cracked. Maybe it was because she looked just as devastated as I felt. But I believed her. What did he tell you? I asked. She laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because sometimes people laugh when they're breaking. He told me he was divorced. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. Of course. How long? Her answer felt like being punched. Almost 11 months. 11 months. I was 8 months pregnant. Do the math. The affair had started before we even announced the pregnancy, before baby showers, before nursery decorations, before family celebrations, before any of it. Ryan had been cheating almost the entire time. I suddenly felt sick, really sick. I excused myself and rushed to the bathroom. Not because of pregnancy, because betrayal has a physical effect nobody talks about. Your body reacts, your stomach twists, your chest tightens, your breathing changes. You literally become ill. I leaned over the sink, looked at my reflection, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Dark circles, swollen eyes, fear, exhaustion. I looked like someone carrying much more than a baby. I looked like someone carrying grief. When I returned, Sophie was crying, quietly, silently, the worst kind, the kind where the tears just keep falling. I loved him. The words shattered something inside me, because I could hear the truth in them. She wasn't lying. She wasn't some homewrecker. She wasn't some villain. She was another victim, just like me. Ryan had lied to her too. Maybe even more than he'd lied to me. For over an hour, we compared stories, compared timelines, compared messages, compared lies, and slowly a horrifying pattern emerged. Ryan wasn't juggling two women. He was juggling an entire network, different women, different cities, different stories, different versions of himself. To Sophie, he was divorced. To another woman, he was separated. To another woman, he was emotionally unavailable because of work. To another woman, he was looking for something serious. To me, he was a loving husband, preparing for fatherhood. Every woman got a custom version of Ryan, a personalized lie, a relationship built on fiction. The man was basically running emotional subscription services, and every woman thought she was special. Then Sophie showed me something I wasn't prepared for, a photograph. At first it looked harmless. Ryan standing outside a restaurant, smiling, normal. Then I looked closer. His arm was around Sophie, and his hand was resting exactly where mine usually rested. The intimacy, the comfort, the familiarity. It wasn't new. It wasn't casual. This had been happening for a long time. I felt tears sliding down my face. Sophie noticed. I'm sorry. I shook my head. No, it's not your fault. And I meant it. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I finally understood something important. Ryan was the problem, not the women. Ryan. The women were simply people who believed his lies, just like I had. That night I didn't sleep. Not even a little. Ryan was on another business trip. I sat in the nursery, rocking slowly in the chair we'd bought together, the chair he'd assembled himself, the chair he'd proudly called Daddy's favorite spot. The irony made me want to scream. Around 2 a.m., I opened our wedding album. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for answers. Maybe I was looking for closure. Maybe I was trying to remember if any of it had ever been real. Picture after picture, smile after smile, promise after promise, and suddenly a terrifying question entered my mind. What if Ryan loved nobody? What if every relationship was just another source of validation? Another audience, another admirer, another mirror. The thought haunted me. Because if it was true, then there was no fixing this. No counseling, no apology, no second chance. How do you repair something that was never genuine to begin with? The next morning, Sophie called again. This time, her voice sounded different, determined, focused, angry, and honestly, I was glad. Anger felt healthier than heartbreak. I found another woman. I sat upright immediately. What? Another one. Within 24 hours, that number became 3 women, then 4, then 5, each with similar stories, each with similar lies, each believing she was somehow unique. One woman had dated him for 8 months, another for nearly a year, another thought they were discussing marriage. Marriage? While he was already married, to me. At some point, the situation became so ridiculous, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the scale of it stopped feeling real. How was one person managing all this? How much energy did it take to maintain that many lies? How many fake stories did he tell every day? How many fake personalities? How many fake futures? At what point does a person lose track of who they actually are? Then came the discovery that changed everything. A woman named Ava. Unlike the others, Ava wasn't emotional. She wasn't crying. She wasn't devastated. She was furious, and she had proof. Lots of it. Screenshots, emails, travel records, hotel bookings, bank statements, thousands of pieces of evidence. When she joined our group call, she looked directly into the camera and said, "Your husband isn't just cheating." Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Ava continued, "He's stealing." The room exploded. What? What do you mean? Stealing from who? Ava took a deep breath, then dropped a bombshell. She worked for one of Ryan's clients, and she'd discovered financial irregularities connected to his business trips, expense reports, corporate reimbursements, false invoices, missing funds. Ryan wasn't just using company travel to cheat. He was using company money to help fund his double life. Suddenly, everything got bigger, much bigger. This wasn't just a marriage crisis anymore. This was a career-ending disaster, potentially worse, and Ryan had absolutely no idea the walls were starting to close around him. That evening, Ryan called. His face appeared on my screen, smiling, relaxed, comfortable, the same smile that used to make me feel safe. Now it made me sick. "Hey, beautiful," I almost laughed. Beautiful, the audacity. "How's my girls?" My girls, plural, as if he still had any right to say that. I stared at him quietly. For a second I wondered if he could tell, if he could somehow sense everything had changed, but he couldn't. People like Ryan spend so much time manipulating others they stop noticing when they're being observed. He talked for 20 minutes, about work, about meetings, about flights, about nonsense, lie after lie after lie, and I just listened, because every lie became evidence. Every sentence became another brick in the wall he was building around himself. Eventually he smiled. "I'll be home Friday." Friday, 3 days away. 3 days before everything exploded. 3 days before his entire life collapsed. 3 days before he learned that every woman he'd treated like an option had finally started comparing notes. And when people compare notes, liars run out of places to hide. As the call ended, Ryan smiled one last time. "I love you." I looked at the screen, at the man I once trusted with my entire heart. Then I whispered something I never imagined I'd say. "Goodbye, Ryan." He didn't hear it. The call had already disconnected. But in that moment, my marriage ended. The only thing left was the confrontation. And Ryan had no idea what was waiting for him when he came home. Ryan came home on Friday. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't happy to see him. I wasn't excited. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't counting the hours until he walked through the front door. I was waiting for a stranger, a dangerous stranger. A man who had spent years pretending to be my husband. The funny thing about betrayal is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every smile looks fake. Every compliment sounds rehearsed. Every touch feels calculated. Every memory becomes suspicious. I used to look at Ryan and see my future. Now I looked at him and saw a performance. And the actor was about to run out of script. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to sit across from someone who hurt you while pretending everything was normal? Because if you have, then you know how exhausting it is. You watch every word, every expression, every lie, and somehow they have no idea you already know. That was me, and Ryan was walking straight into a trap he built himself. The front door opened at 6:12 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the clock. Ryan entered carrying flowers, the universal gift of guilty men. Red roses, my favorite, or at least they used to be. He smiled. "Miss me?" I looked at him, the same blue eyes, the same face, the same voice, and somehow none of it belonged to the man I thought I married. A little. The lie came easier than I expected. Ryan kissed my forehead, then placed a hand on my stomach. "How's my princess?" Our daughter kicked immediately. He laughed. The sound made me sick, because I suddenly realized something. He wasn't a monster. Monsters are easy to hate. Ryan was worse. Ryan was selfish, and selfish people destroy lives without even noticing. Dinner was surreal. Ryan talked constantly. Stories from his trip, funny coworkers, airport delays, client meetings, every sentence a lie, or partially a lie. At one point, he mentioned a restaurant. The same restaurant Sophie had photographs from. The same restaurant where he'd taken another woman. And he told the story without blinking, without hesitation, without guilt. That's when I understood just how experienced he was. This wasn't his first lie. This wasn't his second lie. This was a lifestyle. Later that night, Ryan fell asleep almost immediately. Meanwhile, I sat awake, watching him, studying him, trying to understand. I wasn't looking for evidence anymore. I already had enough evidence. I was looking for humanity. Some sign that the man I'd loved still existed somewhere underneath all the lies. I never found it. Instead, I found something worse. His phone lit up. A message. 11:47 p.m. One sentence. I miss you already, Afal. Not from me. Not from his wife. Not from the mother of his child. From another woman. While he slept beside me, I stared at the screen. Then something inside me finally snapped. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly, like a rope breaking after years of tension, and suddenly I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. The next morning I called Sophie, then Ava, then the others. For 2 hours we talked, compared information, organized evidence, created timelines, and by noon something incredible happened. Every lie Ryan had ever told became visible, because lies survive in isolation. But once people compare stories, the illusion dies. By the end of the call, we had everything: dates, hotels, messages, flights, reservations, financial records, screenshots, voice notes, years of deception, mapped out like a criminal investigation. The truth was horrifying. Ryan wasn't juggling relationships. Ryan was running an operation. Different women in different cities, rotating attention, rotating lies, rotating promises, never staying long enough to get caught, until now. Then Ava delivered the final bombshell, the one that changed everything. I spoke to someone in accounting. The group fell silent. What happened? Sophie asked. Eva looked directly into the camera. They're investigating him. My stomach dropped. Investigating. She nodded. The company found discrepancies, expense reports, corporate cards, travel reimbursements, thousands of dollars, maybe more. Ryan had apparently gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. When people think they're untouchable, they become careless. And Ryan had been untouchable for years, until now. Sunday morning, Ryan was drinking coffee, reading emails, acting completely normal. Then his phone rang. The caller ID displayed his boss's name. I watched him answer, watched his expression change, watched the confidence disappear, slowly, painfully, beautifully. What? Silence. What do you mean suspended? Another silence, longer. Ryan stood up, pacing, his face turning pale. Then came the sentence I'll never forget. There has to be some mistake. There wasn't. The investigation had begun. Officially. His corporate accounts were frozen, his access revoked, his travel records audited, his expense history reviewed. Everything. Ryan spent the entire afternoon making phone calls, trying to explain, trying to defend himself, trying to regain control. But control was gone. And for the first time since I'd known him, Ryan looked afraid. Actually afraid. Not annoyed, not frustrated, afraid. Because narcissistic people believe they're special, until reality reminds them they aren't. Monday morning brought another surprise. A knock at the door. Ryan answered. Then immediately froze. A process server. Legal documents. Formal paperwork. The company wasn't waiting. The audit had uncovered enough problems to move forward immediately. Ryan signed the papers with shaking hands, then sat on the couch, silent, staring at nothing. The man who always had an answer suddenly had none. The man who always controlled the conversation couldn't speak. The man who thought every woman was an option had finally run out of options. That night he tried talking to me, really talking. For the first time in months, maybe years. Emily, I looked up. His voice sounded different, smaller. I think I'm in trouble. I almost laughed. Think? He thought he was in trouble? The man had detonated his entire life. Maybe. He stared at the floor. Then came the words I never expected. I need you. Need. Interesting choice. Not love, not sorry, need. Because that's how Ryan viewed relationships. Resources, support systems, safety nets. People existed to meet his needs, and now that everything was falling apart, he wanted access to mine. Emily. I stayed silent. Please say something. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing him. I wasn't afraid of divorce. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I wasn't afraid of anything. Because once the illusion dies, so does the power it held over you. Then I asked one question, a simple question, the most important question of our marriage. How many? Ryan froze. His entire body froze. He knew exactly what I meant. And for the first time, there was nowhere left to hide, no clever response, no manipulation, no redirecting, no gaslighting, nothing, just truth. And Ryan hated truth, because truth was the one thing he couldn't control. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10, 15. Finally, he whispered, I don't know. I actually believed him, because once you've lied to enough people, eventually you lose count. Then I said the words that changed everything. I know about Sophie. His face went white. I know about Ava. Whiter. I know about Vanessa. Panic. I know about all of them. Ryan looked like someone had pulled the floor out from underneath him, because in that moment he realized something terrifying. The women he'd spent years keeping separate had found each other, and once that happened, his entire world collapsed. For nearly an hour he talked, confessed, explained, cried, begged. The details didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was one sentence that revealed exactly who Ryan was. I never thought I'd lose you. There it was, the truth. Not regret for cheating, not guilt for lying, not heartbreak over hurting me, fear of consequences, fear of loss, fear that his actions finally had a price, and the price was me. 3 nights later, something happened that nobody expected. My water broke. 2 weeks early, at 2:14 in the morning, panic exploded through the house. Hospital bags, phone calls, chaos, fear, excitement, everything at once. And as contractions began ripping through my body, I looked at Ryan, standing there terrified, and realized something. This would be the last major moment we'd ever experience as husband and wife, because after our daughter arrived, nothing would ever be the same. And deep down, I think he knew it too. As we raced toward the hospital, Ryan reached for my hand. I let him hold it, not because I forgave him, not because I trusted him, but because in a few hours our daughter would enter the world, and she deserved one final moment where her parents looked like a family, even if it was already over. And what happened inside that delivery room would change Ryan forever. Pain has a way of making everything else disappear. The lawsuits, the affairs, the lies, the betrayal. For a few hours inside that delivery room, none of it mattered, because my daughter was coming, and suddenly she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The contractions were brutal. Hours passed, then more hours. Doctors came and went, nurses checked monitors, machines beeped constantly. Ryan stayed beside me the entire time, quiet, terrified. For once in his life, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't charming. He wasn't performing. He was just scared. Scared for me, scared for our baby, scared of a future he could no longer control. And for the first time in years, I saw the real Ryan, not the polished version, not the salesman, not the attention addict, just a frightened man watching his life fall apart. Then at 11:43 a.m., our daughter arrived. The room exploded with emotion. A tiny cry, a tiny face, tiny fingers, tiny hands, and suddenly nothing else mattered. The nurse placed her on my chest. I started crying immediately. Real crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind you can't stop. The kind you don't want to stop. Because this was my daughter, my beautiful baby girl, the little person I'd carried for 9 months. The little person who had unknowingly survived the worst chapter of my life with me. Ryan was crying too. Actually crying. His shoulders shaking. His face covered in tears. He reached out and touched her tiny hand, and our daughter wrapped her fingers around one of his. The room went completely silent. For a moment nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody breathed, and Ryan broke, completely. I watched tears stream down his face. Not polite tears. Not movie tears. Ugly tears. The kind that come when a person finally sees themselves clearly. Because in that moment he wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at the nurses. He wasn't looking at the doctors. He was looking at his daughter, and realizing what kind of father he'd almost become. The first week after birth was exhausting. No sleep, no routine, no idea what day it was, just diapers, feedings, bottles, crying, more diapers, more crying, more bottles. Anyone who has had a newborn knows exactly what I'm talking about. Your entire life becomes survival. But something strange happened. Ryan changed, not overnight, not magically, not perfectly, but noticeably. For the first time since I'd known him, his phone stopped mattering. He wasn't checking notifications. He wasn't smiling at hidden messages. He wasn't disappearing into other rooms. He wasn't chasing attention. He was sitting in a rocking chair at 3 in the morning feeding his daughter. And honestly, that made me angrier. Because where had this man been all these years? Why did it take losing everything for him to become present? Why did it take consequences? Why did it take disaster? Have you ever watched someone become the person you needed after it was already too late? Because that's one of the most painful experiences in the world. 3 weeks later, the company terminated him, officially. The investigation had expanded. The financial issues were worse than anyone initially thought. Not criminal, not enough for jail, but enough to destroy his career, enough to end the job, enough to make finding another one incredibly difficult. Ryan took the call, sitting at our kitchen table. I watched from across the room. He listened, nodded, asked a few questions, then quietly hung up. No anger, no yelling, no denial, just silence. The silence of a man who finally understood consequences. That afternoon, he sat on the back porch for nearly 4 hours, alone, just staring into space, thinking, probably for the first time in years. Then came the women, not literally, but the aftermath. One by one, they disappeared. Vanessa blocked him, Melissa blocked him, Katie blocked him, Erica blocked him. Every relationship he'd spent years building collapsed almost instantly. Because attention built on lies disappears the second truth arrives, and suddenly Ryan had something he'd avoided his entire life. Loneliness, real loneliness, no admirers, no secret messages, no ego boosts, no backup options, nothing, just reality. And reality was not impressed by him. One evening, about 2 months after our daughter was born, Ryan asked if we could talk. I already knew where the conversation was going. The question wasn't whether he'd ask. The question was whether I'd say yes. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd once planned baby names, the same table where we'd celebrated promotions, the same table where we'd built our future. Now we were discussing its funeral. Ryan looked exhausted, older, like he'd aged 5 years in a few months. Maybe he had. I know you're leaving. I nodded, because I was. I had already spoken to a lawyer, already found an apartment, already made plans. Ryan closed his eyes. Then he asked the question he'd been avoiding. Is there anything I can do? The answer came immediately. No. His face collapsed, because deep down he already knew. Some things break beyond repair. Trust is one of them. Then he surprised me. He didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't manipulate, didn't cry. He simply nodded and whispered, I understand. Honestly, that hurt more, because it was the first truly mature thing he'd said throughout the entire disaster. Months earlier, I probably would have given anything to hear those words. Now they didn't matter, because timing matters, growth matters, and accountability that arrives after destruction doesn't erase destruction. The divorce was surprisingly peaceful. No screaming, no fighting, no courtroom drama. No revenge, just paperwork, signatures, meetings, endings. By then, we were both exhausted. Too exhausted to keep hurting each other. Ryan accepted joint custody immediately, never argued, never fought, never tried to punish me. Maybe because he knew he'd already done enough damage. Maybe because fatherhood had genuinely changed him. Maybe because he'd finally run out of excuses. I don't know. 3 years passed, then 5, then 7. Life moved forward, the way life always does. My daughter started school, lost teeth, learned to ride a bike, learned to read, learned to roll her eyes exactly like me, and somehow the years slipped away. I built a new life, a peaceful life, not perfect, but honest. And honestly, honest is better than perfect, every time. Ryan stayed involved, consistently involved, not perfect, but present. School plays, birthdays, parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, dance recitals, he showed up, every time. And slowly I started noticing something. He wasn't the same man anymore. The desperate hunger for attention was gone. The constant need for validation was gone. The endless flirting was gone. In its place was someone quieter, humbler, older, a man carrying permanent regret, and regret changes people. When our daughter turned 8, she asked a question, one simple question, one terrifying question. Mommy, why don't you and Daddy live together? Children always know exactly where to aim. I looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at me. Then he smiled sadly. You want to answer? I nodded, and together we explained, age appropriately, carefully, honestly, not every detail, not every betrayal, just the truth. People make mistakes, big mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes hurt people. Sometimes families change shape, but love for children remains. Our daughter listened quietly, then said something neither of us expected. Well, Daddy loves me a lot. Ryan immediately started crying, again, because after everything, after all the affairs, after all the lies, after losing his marriage, after losing his career, after destroying his reputation, the thing he valued most was sitting right in front of him, a little girl who still believed in him, a little girl who gave him a second chance he never deserved. Today my daughter is 9. Ryan is still single. Not because nobody wants him, because he's finally learned to be alone, to be comfortable without constant attention, to build self-worth without borrowing it from strangers. At least that's what he tells me, and I believe him. Ironically, I trust him now more than I did during our marriage. Not as a husband, not as a partner, as a father, and maybe that's enough. People always ask me if I regret leaving. The answer is no, absolutely not. Leaving saved me. It saved my daughter. It forced Ryan to face himself, and it gave all of us a chance to build something healthier. Not together, separately. Sometimes love isn't staying. Sometimes love is walking away when staying would destroy you. The waitress who left that napkin probably doesn't remember me. She probably served hundreds of customers afterward, maybe thousands. Maybe she forgot the entire thing. But I'll never forget her. Because one stranger saw something I couldn't. One stranger was brave enough to warn me. One stranger changed the course of my life with 7 words: check his phone before it's too late. And she was right. It wasn't too late. It hurt. It broke me. It changed everything. But it wasn't too late. Because the truth arrived before I wasted another decade, before my daughter grew up believing lies were normal, before I lost myself completely. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. If someone constantly needs attention from everyone else, no amount of love from one person will ever be enough. They have to fix the emptiness themselves. You can't do it for them. Trust me, I tried. And if you've ever experienced betrayal like this, tell me in the comments. Would you have left, or would you have given Ryan another chance? Because even now, years later, that's a question people still argue about. The end.